Jean Luc Godard, filmmaker, born 1930, Paris. His films include Breathless, The Little Soldier, The Outsiders, Alphaville, and most recently, Pierrot le Fou. He came to Paris in his 20s to study ethnology at the Sorbonne University. In Paris, he fell in with a group of young film fanatics, including Claude Chabrol and François Truffaut, both of whom were to become famous in the so-called new wave of young French directors.
Last Monday, September 13th, 2022, Jean Luc Godard passed away at the age of 91 from assisted suicide. Jean Luc Godard died with 131 directorial credits on IMDb, at least 28 feature films, and worked as a film critic during the 1950s along with François Truffaut. Godard epitomized the French New Wave, which was a highly experimental, often low-budget, and avant-garde film movement in the 1950s and 1960s, which attempted to break French cinema away from what Truffaut called the tradition of quality. It was also a movement of French film fanatics attempting to move the art form forward through relentless experimentation. Godard and Truffaut hated that they saw French cinema as a carbon copy of materialistic and commercialized American cinema that Godard believed served to export American culture and values around the world. So tonight, in honor of Jean Luc Godard, we are going to be looking at the 1963 film Contempt, starring Brigitte Bardot and Michel Piccoli as a French married couple named Paul and Camille. This is the first film where Godard worked with $1 million budget, and the first one where he cast internationally known stars. American actor Jack Palance plays an American film producer who hires Paul to work on the script for Homer's The Odyssey.
Fritz, that's wonderful for you and me, but you think the public is going to understand that?
The producer is at loggerheads with legendary German expressionist director Fritz Lang, who Godard was a huge fan of and actually cast for this film.
I don't know if you're able to understand it, Jerry. I certainly hope you can. It's a fight against the gods.
It was also a cry of despair about Hollywood film and the inability of the American style of filmmaking to tell realistic stories.
J'aime beaucoup le cinémascope. Ce n'est pas fait pour des hommes. C'est fait pour les serpents, pour les enterrements.
Godard uses the debate over the true meaning and scope of Fritz Lang's Odyssey to tell the story of Paul and Camille's marriage falling apart, as Camille begins to suspect that Paul is trying to leverage her to get closer to the American film producer. The dissolution of their marriage over Paul's use of Camille as a form of currency is compared to the materialistic and commercial nature of Hollywood filmmaking itself. Anyway, before I introduce the panel, let me say, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Also, we are now monetized, so if you have any pressing questions during this live show, send us a super chat. We are absolutely obligated by international law, human rights law, to answer it. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Movie Night Extra. All of our after parties are available on there forever. Okay, let me introduce the panel. J. Andrew World, illustrator, book cover artist, comic designer, and artist for Give Them an Argument, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza and Bad Takes. Kristina Oakes. She has recently rebranded to Cosmopolitics, twitch.tv/Cosmopolitics, or on Patreon, or find her on all the social media websites, and she streams about 4 times a week. Karthik Purushothaman, alienencounters.substack.com, and he co-hosts Revolutionary Tracks with Left Flank Bets. JG Michael, host of Parallax Views. I, of course, am your long-suffering host, Forrest Miller. I forgot to introduce myself earlier. Without further ado, let's get started.
That was good. I like how you bustled through Karthik's name.
And Karthik's going to be on at 9, I guess. He doesn't get out of work just yet.
Yeah, that's fine. So he missed, you being like, Karthik.
Karthik Purushothaman. The famous Karthik Purushothaman. Yeah, so I think I did a good job with that.
No, especially you had Karthik's name in there, and I love the dude, but his last name is a mouthful.
It definitely is. But so Jean Luc Godard. Let's hear some takes. What do you guys think of this movie?
Best captain of the Enterprise.
Stop. No.
Great
Bad.
stuff.
Yeah, no, it was actually kind of fun because I really only know Jack Palance from like his late period where he was doing Batman and Tango and Cash and City Slickers, and of course City Slickers 2, Legend of Curly's Gold. And where like he was kind of a punchline, even though like he's like this old man still doing all those push-ups, which is like kind of what he's known for.
City Slickers. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's the first time he really works with internationally known stars, and also he has an American producer producing this that like Jack Palance's character is based on. That he doesn't really get along with throughout this production. He finds Americans just like uncouth and kind of too sexual about things. So the fact that he's parodying that in an actual movie where that's like one of the themes of the movie is pretty funny.
This is also one of his bigger budgeted works from this time period, right?
It's his biggest budgeted work. I think it's the first time he worked with $1 million budget in his entire career.
It's absolutely beautiful too to look at because the cinematography is just gorgeous throughout the whole piece. It still has that very 60s, blue and brown color scheme that like everything from the 60s seems to have, but just nicely shot though,
So let's start with this. I have a video of them talking about how hard it actually was to get the colors. Like the actual film stock for the colors, because I guess they filmed it in Italy, and Italy has a monopoly, and they traded up the European market between Kodak and an Italian company and an English company or something. So I have a video that I got for you to actually go through the color scheme.
Nice.
Oui, quand on regarde le mépris, je veux dire, on se rend compte que la couleur est une chose très importante, puisque finalement, le film est éclatant de couleurs, et avec en plus la musique de Delru qui est absolument extraordinaire. Et le grand truc tient, une grande partie du film tient là-dessus. Et alors, il y a une chose assez curieuse, parce que quand on a commencé à tourner, donc ça devait être tourné en Technicolor, mais naturellement avec des prises de vue faites en Eastman. Au bout de 4 ou 5 jours, on va donc au laboratoire Technicolor à Rome pour voir les tirages. Et il y avait eu quelques temps avant des accords avec les fabricants de pellicules, et j'étais en fait partagé le marché pour pas tous trop en concurrence. Et l'Italie avait obtenu comme marché de faire toute la positive fabriquée par Ferragnin, alors qu'avant il y avait la concurrence de Kodak et de Gebert et d'Acra. Bon. Et alors donc on va voir les premiers rushs, et on était complètement catastrophés, parce qu'il y a Jean Luc qui est un monsieur qui adore les couleurs vives et les couleurs éclatantes, etc. on s'est retrouvé avec des prises de vue assez ternes, où il n'y avait pas de jaune qui claquait, pratiquement pas de rouge. C'était une image qui était très, très brune dans l'ensemble. Les verts étaient jamais très brillants. La mer était pas vraiment bleue. Elle était complètement effondrée. Et les gens de Technicolor nous ont dit, mais non, vous inquiétez pas, ça vient du fait qu'on a tiré ça sur de la Ferrania. Alors du coup, ils ont envoyé un type dans la nuit à Paris chercher de la pellicule chez Kodak. Et le lendemain, ils nous ont montré les mêmes tirages, tirés sur la pellicule Kodak. Et puis, en même temps, ils nous avaient fait le plaisir de nous faire deux prises tirées en Technicolor. Bon, d'un seul coup, on s'est retrouvés avec nos tirages très éclatants. Et bon, on a été rassurés. On s'est dit, bon, bah d'accord, à partir de maintenant, il n'y a pas besoin de s'inquiéter. Donc, à partir du moment où on est dans les normes et qu'on a les lumières de tirage correctes, on continue comme ça. Alors, donc, le film, alors ça, c'était tout au début, durant la première semaine. Alors, donc, les 15 semaines de tournage du film, on fait tous les tournages et on va voir les roches quand on pouvait, suivant les endroits. Bon, et tout ça, on fait rien. Et puis, sur ce, les Américains trouvent que le film n'est pas suffisamment intéressant pour être tiré en Technicolor. Le Technicolor, à l'époque, il faut dire qu'il fallait tirer au moins 100 copies. Bon, maintenant, je veux dire, c'est plus un problème, mais c'est des choses qu'on ne faisait pas du tout à l'époque. On tirait pas jamais autant de copies que ça. Donc, ils décident de tirer moins de 100 copies, donc il fallait mieux le tirer normalement. Et de ce coup-là, on fait revenir la négatif à Paris pour pas avoir à venir à chaque fois à Rome pour discuter des trucs. Et puis, on arrive à ce qu'on appelle la copie zéro. Et la copie zéro était tirée en Kodak. Et d'un seul coup, clac, tout ce qu'on avait vu en lumière très atténuée était éclatant de couleur. Et on a trouvé ça absolument immonde, affreux. Et on a mis un bout de temps à se faire. Ça veut dire qu'on s'était complètement habitué à cette image qui nous plaisait pas du tout au début. Et on s'était habitué, on avait trouvé ça bien finalement. Et voilà, finalement, on s'est habitué très bien à l'image très colorée.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, just my experience with photography, a lot of it, like the grain of the film and like all this, the type of, stock of film, what you're putting the photos on, all of that stuff affects the whole picture. So it's actually kind of interesting to hear them going through this creative process of running through different stocks of film. And if you're listening to this and don't speak French, that's basically what it was running through, was like, oh, we tried this film.
So there's two companies. Ferragna, I guess, is the Italian one that had a monopoly in Italy of film stock, and then Kodak.
Finally, your Italian accent makes sense.
But Ferragna, so they had a monopoly in Italy, and so they had to go back and forth. This is what he's saying, to France to get actual Kodak film stock. And he talks about in a different clip that they couldn't get a Technicolor camera. They had to get like a Fran color. I'll play the clip later and actually see what they can. But it's like it's the French manufactured version of a Technicolor camera, because Technicolor wouldn't sell them a camera for whatever reason. Let them actually tour the whole studio and look at the process, but wouldn't let them actually get the camera to shoot this. So they had to travel between the two. And this is on the Americans' dime, right? Like, this is on the dime of people who already are kind of upset about this movie because they don't think it's sexual enough. And this is before they added that first scene where, he's like, oh, I like your legs. And she's like, do you like my thighs? And he's like, yeah, I like your thighs. I like the wing meat. I like the, I like the wings. I like the thighs. I like the breast, whatever meat you got, I'm into it. That whole
And if it was just Quentin Tarantino, they'd stop at the feet. He's like, do you like my feet? Yeah, I like your feet. And then it's just 20 minutes of just a shot of her foot.
Quentin Tarantino's film company is called, I think it's called a Band Aside, or a band of, it's named after Godard's A Band Apart, the film that he did after Breathless, which is the one that you see in the intro that I made, where it's like da-na, and then they're doing the snapping. That film is the one that Tarantino actually named his film production company after.
It's amazing how influential he was.
Godard is one of the greats. I mean, it's sad to lose him. I understand why you'd want to do assisted suicide when you start to decline at 91. That shit comes at you fast, and then you don't really have a say over, you know, what happens from there. He's kind of a persnickety man, or like a you know, he's a troubled man, I guess, and hard to deal with. I wouldn't leave myself up to my family and friends either. You know what I mean? Like in the context of like, and we'll go over probably the after party, the story of him and Truffaut, you know, kind of having their collaboration split up. But like, he was not easy to deal with, and I can't imagine that if I had that level of artistic genius, and if I had alienated that many people, that I would want to decline and leave that to other people to deal with. Like, be like, oh yeah, I'm sure they'll take care of me. I'm sure they'll be equitable with my money when I'm like in a coma or something. I would just say, hey, I'm 91. I've made it this far. Maybe it's time to euthanize myself.
Also, like Terry Pratchett, you know, was elected to do assisted suicide. He actually passed away before he, you know, could do himself in. But he spent the last couple of years of his life touring around and just like meeting with as many of his fans as possible as a way for everybody to kind of say goodbye. And like about a year before he passed away, I got to see him speak in DC, and it was incredible. And so when he finally did pass away, I kind of felt like I had already made my peace with it. And I think that's the other thing that assisted suicide gives you is a chance to actually like get that closure. So like I might have ugly cried when David Bowie died, but I was very much at peace with Terry Pratchett's death.
Oh, David Bowie also, right before he died, did that entire last album where he did the music video where he actually like watches himself pretty much. Like you watch him pass away, which is kind of an incredible thing. He knew he was dying too. Obviously,
and then he still recorded a bunch of demos before he passed away.
Yeah, well, so I should say about you know, the career of Godard. Even in 2017, he was still in the process of filmmaking. He released a big kind of thesis statement, Film Socialisme, in 2010, which was kind of back to his avant-garde roots. I tried to watch it, really couldn't. I just, you know, when you get to a certain level of, I
was going to say he also had a movie that came out in 2018, The Image Book, which it's sort of a collage film, but it's like the closest he's ever done to a horror movie, which I thought that was an interesting way for him to go out, because The Image Book was sort of him reflecting on the way the world has become in the past few decades. But he goes into some interesting directions.
That's available on Criterion Channel right now. If you want to go, they have 21 of his films, and you know, I didn't go, like, I tried to watch Film Socialisme, was not, you know, just couldn't do it. It was just too avant-garde for my taste. But they have everything from, you know, The Image Book. They have all of his older stuff, pretty much, like not all of it, but like, you know, a good chunk of his older stuff. They have a whole, you know, collection with him and Anna Karina, like his ex-wife, who was kind of his muse. They started working with as a model in A Band Apart, like which is a movie that I did watch within the last few days and actually really enjoyed. That was like one of my favorites of the ones I watched. Did not as much care for Every Man for Himself. That's just not my speed. The second she was like, hey, the cows sometimes lick my ass, I'm just like, this is not what I'm into. But you know, the other.
Are you sure about that, Forrest?
Was that truly his From Dusk Till Dawn moment where Quentin Tarantino wrote a part for himself where he drinks champagne off of
well, this wasn't. He didn't say it. It was just it was a woman. Was like, no, it was
But he was in a cow costume, right?
But he named the main character in this movie Paul Godard in Every Man for Himself, and he's like this famous. You know, I think his wife is the filmmaker and he's like a writer, but in this movie, so that's kind of, it feels like that's kind of his corollary to himself maybe. And in there's a lot of asses in this movie, but the first scene, a guy who works at the hotel runs up to him and was like, I'm sorry for coming on to you, let me fuck you in the ass. And it's the Paul Godard character. That's the first time you see him, is this guy trying to fuck him in his car. So I don't know what that says about his own relationship to asses, but this movie did seem to be a docu-thesis, I guess.
He likes asses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, they spent an inordinate amount of time filming that ass, which no complaints here. But
He also
you know,
he also asked some. He has the Paul Godard character ask a soccer coach if he ever thinks about feeling up his own daughter or something. So I don't know. This movie has a lot of elements to it that
he asked a soccer.
yeah. He's like, do you ever think about feeling up your own daughter? And then I don't know, just was not my thing. Was that movie was not my thing. And then, you know, I was reading the synopsis of it, and they're like, his first commercial project after years in the avant-garde wilderness. And I was like, this does not seem, I guess, like this is I guess in France maybe it's a commercial.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also like in France, there's a interesting song where this famous French songwriter wrote about like basically.
I think Kristina just left to steal the car of the car alarm.
But basically wrote this song that's a big innuendo to oral sex about lollipops, and convinced this underage girl to sing the song.
That's not Lil Wayne that did that.
No, this is like decades before Lil Wayne. This is like back in the 60s. And so they did this big production thing of this girl singing about lollipops that was a very thinly veiled innuendo about oral sex.
Shorty want a thug. Bottles in the club. Whatever comes after that.
But yeah, anyways, it's a great it's kind of fun, but that's just very France for you. Where they really are weird over there.
Yeah, just, you know, moving right past that. What films have you guys seen by Godard though? I mean, I'm definitely curious.
All the Star Trek movies.
Stop. No. That's not even that's Picard. That's not even good. Like, that's not even like a
Jean Luc Picard.
I mean, he's named after him. What's
There's actually this one episode where Q walks in. He's like,
oh,
I'm looking for a Jean Luc
Picard. We're moving past this. Yeah, but I'm curious. What Godard movies have you guys watched? I've watched like a handful of them, but I'll go last.
I've only watched a handful too. I mean, of course, I had to watch Breathless when I was in film school, and then there's a few of his that like I saw. Like, I don't even know if they were subtitled in the theaters that I went to see them in, but they were like re-showing some of his films, and I can't even remember the titles of them. It was like a whole Godard marathon, and I saw it when I was like 24, so it's like a blur to me. But I've seen a few of them, but Breathless was the one that I remembered the most.
Yeah, I've seen like a handful as well, but especially like ones that he did like in the 60s, obviously, because I was like, that's like kind of like my like favorite era of like, especially like French cinema in general, because I'm a huge like Brigitte fan. It's kind of sad.
I like the sci-fi movie he did too. Not to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I think it was Alphaville with Eddie Constantine, who ended up doing. He was in all kinds of like French noir movies, but Godard introduced me to his work too, so I like Alphaville a lot. If anyone's seen,
that's the one I haven't seen. The one that I remember a lot that I've mentioned on the show is Weekend, which is kind of his exploration of like a bunch of Alice in Wonderland style violence. I would say like each scene is a different, like there's car crashes and they're walking through this thing, and then, you know, you see like bodies in a car and they're walking past that and the car's on fire, and then so like it's Weekend is this. I mean, so that's a movie that I remember a lot because I kind of I got film struck for like a weekend when I was just out of college. I guess it was like when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with myself after going and getting my fucking film degree or whatever, and like realizing that nobody really wants you to edit anything after that. But so I went through like a weekend where like I took edibles and watched I think like 5 Godard movies in a row. I watched Breathless again. I watched Weekend. I watched Contempt, which is the one that we're talking about tonight, and I've never remembered the name of the movie, but I just kind of picked out of a hat like, oh, let's do this one because Conan's not going to mind us talking about Contempt. And
You're
then
Contempt the court, Forrest.
and Weekend, and so then I watched this weekend. I watched Band of Outsiders. I watched Every Man for Himself. I watched some of like the short film stuff that he did, which is interesting, but it's a little bit too avant-garde for me. There's the one he did with Truffaut where it's just like a woman kind of just walking through, Paris as it's overly flooded, and like she's talking about her day, and I'm like, I don't care what you did today. This doesn't like you had to go to school and it was flooded. Okay, I've done that a million fucking times. But so he's like an interesting director. Oh, I've also seen Le Chinese, which is like the one he did about the Maoists running around Paris. I think that's the first one that I watched, where they're just kind of like kids that are like wannabe revolutionaries, like LARPing around Paris.
Oh wow, we've never heard anyone do that today.
Yeah, and it was, I think I watched that one first because it was right on the tail of me taking the last semester of college. I took a class that was a survey of the Cultural Revolution, and they talked about how in France, French, like a lot of French youth during like the New Left period didn't want to be associated with Stalinism, so they got like attracted to Mao because they're like, well, this is socialisme without the Stalin whatever chain around the neck, I guess. And we're still at that period now, though Maoism is less prominent because I think they've kind of tarnished the reputation with all of the sex cults that Varn talked to us about.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I guess we should talk about the weird sex cults in Paris.
That's just Paris, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, nude beaches and all.
Which is probably why the anonymous director of Chinatown is hanging out there.
That's the new Maoism, MAGA communism.
Yes. Except you idolize your landlord.
So except you're working in tandem with your MAGA landlord, and then the whole communism part starts to go away, and you and your landlord just end up talking. I don't know where it goes from there. Like they're like, hey, talk to your MAGA neighbors, talk to your MAGA, the people in your life. All right, well, JG was upset about MAGA communism, I guess. But yeah, so this is from an interview that he did around the time of this, where he's talking about the scene with Bardot, Brigitte Bardot, that at the beginning where they had to add a beginning, and I think when they're talking in front of the thing and she has her naked bottom out to the wind, they had to add those scenes for the American producers. So this is talking about the process of that. She was not happy with that. He wasn't happy with that. The Jack Palance style American producers, I guess, really did want that, though.
Ugh, Americans.
Dans Le Mépris, cette fameuse scène où Mademoiselle Bardot se dénude complaisamment, est-ce que finalement elle vous a été imposée ou pas? Pas complaisamment, non. Il y a beaucoup de tact, je trouve, au contraire. Est-ce que vous a été imposée cette scène ou pas?
C'est-à-dire, je n'avais pas tourné au début, et puis les producteurs américains m'ont dit c'est très beau, mais c'est pas commercial. Alors on voudrait une scène au début du film où Bardot et Piccoli sont tout nus dans un lit en train de s'aimer. On voudrait la même chose au milieu et on voudrait la même chose à la fin. Alors je dis à la fin, c'est pas possible. Au milieu, c'est pas possible puisqu'ils s'aiment plus. Ceci dit, je peux vous le faire d'une autre façon, ça vous plaira quand même. Et au début, bon d'accord, mais je peux vous la faire d'une certaine façon seulement. Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord? Oui, alors je l'ai fait comme ça.
Enfin, vous ne l'aviez pas prévu au départ.
Je l'ai prévu, mais enlevé, parce que je trouvais qu'elle était inutile. Je la trouve toujours inutile, mais... Enfin, inutile par rapport au... Ça n'apporte rien de plus à l'histoire, si vous voulez.
Mais je croyais que vous faisiez ce que vous vouliez.
Oui, mais ça, je veux. Moi, je le trouve très bien. Maintenant, je ne l'enlèverai pas. Si on me demandait de l'enlever, je voudrais l'enlever. À un moment, il avait été question de l'enlever pour la censure, et ça, pour rien au monde.
Oui. Mais Brigitte Bardot, par exemple, elle l'a accepté facilement?
Brigitte, elle avait accepté de faire ce film. Elle a fait ce que je lui ai demandé.
Parce que dans le fond, maintenant, elle peut vraiment faire ce qu'elle veut. Elle n'est plus obligée de se montrer dans une certaine tenue. Les producteurs sont déjà très contents rien que de la voir. Même habillée, elle vaut de l'or. Alors, si elle l'a fait, ça veut dire quoi? Que ça lui plaît de se montrer ainsi? Ou que la connaissez bien?
Ça, je ne saurais vous dire, mais enfin, c'est un personnage. Et puis Brigitte Bardot, c'était dans ce film, c'était bien de la montrer au départ. Je veux dire, il faut pas tricher du moment qu'on la déshabille un peu, autant la déshabiller totalement, ou bien pas du tout.
Moi, ce que je comprends pas, c'est qu'elle accepte encore de faire ça alors qu'elle n'en a plus besoin.
Oui, moi, c'est pas une question d'accepter ou de pas accepter comme une jeune fille. C'est pas du tout érotique, c'est-à-dire accepter de se déshabiller ou pas déshabiller. C'est comme si vous disiez Praxitèle quand il sculptait Vénus nue. Est-ce que Vénus acceptait de se déshabiller?
On est d'accord. Enfin, je veux pas être plus prude que je ne suis, mais je crois que c'est quand même une assez fausse raison parce que des gens qui voudraient voir Mlle Bardot déshabillée dans un film d'un mauvais metteur en scène ou d'un metteur en scène vulgaire n'osent pas y aller. Et vous leur donnez bonne conscience parce que par ces marchés, vous leur donnez
tant mieux
ça.
parce qu'ils ont bien raison. S'ils la trouvent jolie, moi aussi, il n'y a pas de...
Certains de vos films ont été des échecs. Comment est-ce que vous ressentez les échecs?
I like how hostile that whole interview seems.
Yeah,
it's like she was cool with it. And he's like, not really, okay. Like, but also too, Brigitte Bardot was like a very popular sex symbol at the time. So of course, Americans are like, we want to see the goods.
Yeah, but I mean, he didn't even seem like he was like, hey, she's not cool with it. He seemed like he was being like kind of pervy about it. He's like, people that want to see her get naked, and he's like, yeah, but it's art. Like, I don't know. But that is.
I mean, also in the 1960s, that's what people, especially in the early 60s, people went to French films to see nudity.
Yeah.
There wasn't there wasn't porn, the porn theaters. You had to, that came later in the 60s. So at this point, you had to go to art houses to watch French films.
Yeah.
You still sometimes do. You watch French films just, for the nudity. That's why we cover them on the... No, I'm kidding.
But like, and it's like what Sharon Tate said. She's like, I'm fine with nudity if it has a purpose, if it's not like in a perverted type of way, like something simple, like taking a bath, taking a shower, a simple lovemaking scene, like nothing too graphic or like a violent rape scene. She's like, it has its purpose. And I'm like, yeah, true. But sometimes people just, demand.
Yeah, but I mean, I think in this, it kind of, I don't think it's completely unnecessary. I think that it kind of adds something in the beginning. You're like, oh, well, this is like a couple that's very much in love. And then you watch their relationship unravel. And like, not to say that I think that this movie could have definitely survived without it if they had done a scene.
It could have been done way more distastefully. I'll say that. I mean, I thought it was pretty well done. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that opening scene, I think the movie...
It shows you that the same day, right? The same morning, they're very much in love. They're, flirting around. They're still like attached to each other. They're in that, it seems like they're in that passionate moment of a relationship where, like, despite the fact they've been together for a long time and they're still married, they're still very much in love and still very much attached to each other. And then, for things to go kind of spiral out of control that fast, you kind of need to see that in the beginning, or else it's like, all right, well, it seems like you guys were fighting from the beginning. So I think it does that job well. I think you could have done that without showing them naked, because you could have just written it in a different way or something. But I don't think it's an ineffective scene.
Yeah, I think that scene really does help the film. And you're right; it didn't have to have the nudity in it, but the scene itself, like the importance of the scene, is not the ass. It was them showing their relationship.
Yeah, and like the almost puppy love style, like, and you'd assume that because she says later in the movie, you used to write crime novels and we were poor but we were still happy. So you realize they've been together for a long time and this relationship is like this for a long time, and then it unravels as fast as it does because she doesn't like his behavior and he's jealous of the even though he kind of pushes her in front of the American film producer as like kind of a currency almost, then he gets jealous about it and transforms himself into Odysseus holding the fucking gun. Yeah. Like, so I think that it works for that, because you have to realize how passionate and I guess intertwined they were before this caper of madness started.
Yeah. And they call it puppy love.
And when Fritz Lang, which by the way, I love the fact that he's in this movie, and I wonder if he was difficult to work with as a director as an actor as he was a director.
You want to find out?
Oh, we have the answer. Inquiring minds want to know.
He 100% was, because I watched a video that I watched an hour-long thing where they're just yelling at each other over each other and debating directorial styles. But this is him talking about the, and I know that a good percentage of our audience hasn't actually seen this film, so I hate to spoil it, but this is them talking about the car accident scene, and he uses that as an example of the kind of filmmaking that he would never do. So yes, I assume that he was quite.
Which interesting fact, his last film was in 1960. So there's like a couple year period where he kind of just basically stopped making films.
And he talks about that. I think I have the clip to talk about it in the after party if you wanted, but he talks about why that is during their hour-long thing where they're going back and forth. He talks about why he's getting back into it and this kind of distaste he has, I guess, for filmmaking to a certain level, and like the lack of inspiration he had during that period. But this is them shouting at each other. Well, just going back and forth. I think this is before it gets really intense.
Nous avons parlé de quelque chose de nos dinosaures. Quand nous avons commencé à travailler au film muet, nous avons, pour le répéter, nous n'avons pas vu les paroles, nous avons vu seulement l'action. L'action, oui. Entendu. Alors, j'ai trouvé que nous avons travaillé ensemble une grande différence, une différence que je crois c'est très important. Je crois que vous avez raison. Je parle maintenant de l'accident du car. L'accident de la voiture et quand Bardo et Bardo sont morts. Alors, moi, sûrement, j'aurais fait comme ils sont dans la voiture marche plus vite. Peut-être il y a quelque chose, le pneu, ou il ne peut pas faire ça. Et je montrerai l'accident. Vous ne le montrez pas. Vous avez seulement montré comment ils sont morts, ils sont entre deux camions. Parce que pour vous, les conséquences était beaucoup plus important que l'accident soi-même. C'est ça. Et ça, je crois que c'est quelque chose qui est très intéressant, très important. Mais, encore parlant, comme vous m'avez demandé, mais par exemple, moi, c'est quand nous avons travaillé. Ça, moi, on me dit, par exemple, que j'improvise beaucoup. Oui, parce que vous avez trouvé ça, parce que quand j'ai vu des films, par exemple, les araignées, je me souviens, il y a beaucoup de choses que vous avez fait dedans que j'ai fait aussi, et c'était il y a 30 ans, ça l'a... Un peu comme la nouvelle vague. Oui. Je suis très content que vous dites ça. Moi, je le trouvais aussi, je n'ai pas vu ces films depuis 30 ans, 40 ans, alors on ne parle pas de ça. Mais écoute, il y a une grande différence entre vous et moi. Vous travaillez dans une autre méthode. Moi, vous aimez l'improvisation, moi, je ne l'aime pas. Mais un metteur en scène, je crois qu'il doit être un créateur, je dis. Je crois qu'un metteur en scène, en tout cas, le metteur en scène ne doit pas parler. Il ne doit pas écrire parce qu'il doit dire ce qu'il a à dire avec les films qu'il fait. Si un metteur en scène a nécessaire le mot, l'écriture pour expliquer ce qu'il voulait dire, alors, dans mon opinion, ce n'est pas un bon film ou un vrai metteur en scène. Un metteur en scène qui dit à l'acteur, écoute, tu viens par ici, dans cette porte, tu sais, tu as lu le manuscrit, et tu fais ça et ça, et voilà le dialogue. Alors, quand tu as terminé, vous partez par ici, c'est pour moi un trafic cop, qu'est-ce que veut dire un agent de la circulation. Un flic de la circulation, ce n'est pas un metteur en scène.
Yeah, I was waiting for him to give advice on how to abuse women on his set, but it's one of the things that Fritz Lang was famous for.
So he talks about throughout this entire thing how his style of direction is much more almost documentarian, I guess, in nature, as opposed to the much more avant-garde kind of style of the French New Wave, which is interesting, like back and forth argument to have. Although Fritz Lang is pretty pretentious about it the entire. Yeah. Which Godard is kind of
yes, he's a documentarian. He really did try to drown those kids in Metropolis.
It sort of reminds me of the debates that happened between like the two documentarians, Frederick Wiseman and Werner Herzog, because Wiseman was known for like making these films that had no narration. He just sort of, filmed what was happening, and Herzog was like, no, you have to show the ecstatic truth. The filmmaker has to speak within the film itself. That's sort of what that clip reminded me of. The
in this case, it's the opposite. The German is saying that you should not.
But there's
I know it is kind of funny that it's Werner Herzog saying the opposite point, and I think that every director now realizes that there's no separating the director from the film, right? Like, and I mean it kind of peaks during the auteur era where it's kind of almost like a thesis statement. I'm doing promo at the same time I'm talking, but the auteur style of literally doing like a self narrative within your film, and like it's indetachable from who you are as a director. But I mean, regardless, like there's an understanding that the director is kind of an author, and it's interesting to hear Fritz Lang kind of say, no, just don't put any of yourself into it. This is like a project, and you're creating this this spanning project, and it's like almost like capturing a documentary. And
in a weird way,
yeah.
I was gonna say, in a weird way, I think Fritz Lang may have like a slight point in the sense that, I mean, I think a director does work as an author of a film, but I also think people leave out that the actors bring something, right? Like an actor can bring a completely different interpretation to a role than maybe what the director initially expected. I think film is a very collaborative project, so I don't think there's a single author, which I think too many people look at film as like, they'll look at a Godard film and say, no, this is just Godard's film. But I think it's just as much like a Bardot film or a Jack Palance film or a Fritz Lang film as it is, Godard's baby.
Yeah, because this is just like Tango and Cash.
And it's also it's a work in progress, I guess, right? Like his own frustrations, it seems like, and I don't know this for a fact, but his own frustrations with working with these American producers seems to shine through. And the fact that he has the sex scene in the beginning, he scraps it. It seems like very much he's working on the actual script for this, and working on the scenes and where people are going to be. Oh, by the way, I guess his dad was named Paul Godard, so that's maybe why he named that character in the other movie after him. But the dynamics of it seem to shift, and it seems like this movie is kind of about his own disillusionment with Hollywood cinema and interrogating where the values of Hollywood cinema and the corruption of Hollywood cinema kind of comes into his own work, into the French New Wave, and into the international film scene, I guess, and how it corrodes everything it touches. And for it seems like it would be that during this process where these American producers are hitting him up for like, oh yeah, show some more ass in this, like get them in bed together. Like it would seem like that frustration would be borne out by the actual production, I'm sure. And in that way, that would add those American producers as the authors of the film as well, in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, you take what's happening and get inspired by what's going on. Certainly does help.
I hate these Americans. I'm so inspired to create.
And they probably didn't speak French either, so like he could talk to them like right in front of like everybody who speaks French. So
that's another element I think in a lot of his work is language, like the disconnect between, obviously, in this film it's especially pronounced because Fritz Lang obviously speaks some French, but also, I mean, a lot of what he speaks is German, and so like to have the translator that has to translate for Fritz Lang to the Americans, and then the same translator, like Francesca, I think is their name, that he gropes her bottom, and that starts the emotional ennui of the film. But like for the it peaks it, I guess. But for her to have to kind of translate through all these characters, and you don't know anything about her. She doesn't say anything about herself, right? Like he asks, like, "Oh, what did your boss do? Have you worked for him a long time?" Like she's asking him all these, and she blocks the answers to all these questions. You see that she is sad for that moment, and he has that super lame, corny guy line where he's like, "You're too pretty to be sad, haha." But besides that, like you don't
just
find out
smile
anything about
if you're
her.
depressed.
but she's kind of the cipher that all of the communications between everybody have to go through, because nobody's speaking the same language. And it's funny that the two characters that do speak the same language, I mean, not to get too whoa deep bro here, but the two characters that do speak the same language, Paul and Camille, are the ones that have a disconnect in communication through this actual movie.
Which is, this movie's like an onion. It's many layers. And they all make you cry.
This movie's like an ogre. Ogres have layers. What?
It's not like a happy ogre like in Shrek, though. It's very sad, like depressing.
This is an ogre suffering from. This is a French ogre. He's suffering from
ennui.
No, I was going to say ogui.
Ogui.
But yeah, I mean, it is a sad. It's Shrek before he goes on the adventure. It's Shrek as I'd imagine he is in the swamp with all the fairy tale creatures.
Oh, without donkey.
But yeah, I think there's Fritz Lang couldn't even finish the Odyssey. He has no room to talk shit. He seems like he's still working on it at the end, and that's kind of one of the most jarring scenes, right? Like you see the actual producer of the film, and it's almost like, well, Hollywood keeps going whether or not you're a part of it, right? Like you could be the main financier, and it's like Fritz Lang is still gonna, like, he's just gonna find another producer, I'm sure, or the money's in the will for the guy working on the movie. I'm not quite sure what the financing situation is. They don't make that clear, but he just keeps working on the movie despite the fact that the producer of it is dead after hitting a fucking big ass truck.
Yeah, which one thing that was kind of driving me crazy is I remember I used to hang out at the Word and Pictures Museum, which was a comic book art museum owned by Kevin Eastman, the co-creator of the Ninja Turtles. And one of the rules in Hollywood is never make a movie with your own money. And Kevin Eastman made that mistake with Heavy Metal Fact 2, which is the sequel to the animated film Heavy Metal. Because at that point in time, Kevin Eastman owned the rights to Heavy Metal magazine. And basically sunk a lot of money into this movie that was absolutely mediocre and came out direct to video, several years later. I only very recently watched it because for a long time it was too traumatic for me to watch the movie because like he had to close down the Word and Pictures Museum because of the financial involvement of it.
And then Andy had nowhere to hang out.
And Andrew Lloyd Webber made the same mistake too with using his really useful group to do the Phantom of the Opera. So like it's good to have Hollywood or like a big budget studio involved.
So that made it seem very strange that Jack Palance was talking about it being his money, because in Hollywood, like I said, it's never their money. He might be in charge of the money from the studio, but it's not his money per se.
Well, I mean, much like a legend has it, he's still filming. Stevie's killing it with his comments. But his money, I mean, who knows if it's like he's kind of the producer as a role is kind of almost like a cipher for the money to go through, like from wherever it comes from. And you could assume that when he goes to Rome or whatever, he's trying to collect more money from whatever situation he can. And then has the fucking accident that kills him and his new 28-year-old bride, which there's no way. Maybe she's 28 in this. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, the other thing too is
it's the same age. Me and Brigitte Bardot.
The other thing too is probably he was in Rome trying to get the mafia to invest the money laundering, because honestly, the best films, and this is going to be one of my theses here, the best films are made with mafia money.
Yeah, I mean, well, they make fun of that in The Sopranos, right? Like they make fun of the fact that they literally had the mafia fucking pay for Chrissy's film that he makes with the screenwriter friend that he later whacks in a drunken rage. But so here's the CinemaScope one that I was talking about, where they're talking about hold on, I see which one. I think it's this one. But so this is the actual like the cinematographer that we saw in the beginning, which let me look up his name really fast. But
Jacques Cousteau.
No, this movie's above water. This movie's filmed by water, but it's not. No. So,
that was the first person I could think of.
Raul Coutard, I guess is his name. I like him. I watched his 26-minute Criterion has a 26-minute interview with him where he talks about the process of like making the actual film. And I stopped when he started talking about like the actors and stuff. It's like I don't care about your thoughts about the actors. Like you're just some old guy, but like
actors.
The Bridget Bardot, she is so beautiful.
Mm.
This is he's talking about the process of getting CinemaScope and like the issues with filming that way, and they make fun of it in this movie, right? Like they have Fritz Lang in there, and he's like, "Oh, CinemaScopes is for snakes and funerals or whatever." He has that line.
Le grand problème de Scott, c'est que moi je dis toujours quand un metteur en scène me dit on va faire un truc en scope, je lui dis qu'est-ce qu'on va faire? On va tourner un film en scope ou on va faire un film en scope, ce qui n'est pas du tout la même chose. Bon, alors au début Jean Luc a commencé à faire un film en scope. On le voit de la façon dont il utilise le cinémascope en large, etc. Et puis petit à petit, ça s'est évadé. C'était bon, on se retrouvait avec un grand format. Bon, on l'utilise, mais on ne l'utilise pas en tant que moyen. Donc, je veux dire, il n'était pas très à cheval sur les difficultés. En plus, comme il n'aimait pas du tout que les images qui étaient des tordus, etc. Donc, on pouvait arriver à lui dire non, faut mieux carrer comme ça. Bon, alors par contre, là dans le mépris, il a fait plein de cadrages où on met les têtes complètement en bas, alors qu'il y a beaucoup d'air au-dessus, où se mettent complètement de travers, etc. Ça, c'est un truc qu'il a beaucoup aimé, mais il l'aurait fait si ça avait été un autre format, je pense. Alors à propos du format, alors Jean-Luc avait un principe à cette époque-là, c'était si on fait un film en noir et blanc, il sera en format académie, c'est-à-dire 1.33. Et si c'est en couleur, il est forcément en cinémascope. Ça, c'était son grand truc. Alors, il n'y a qu'à regarder dans sa production, tout a été fait comme ça jusqu'à ce qu'il s'arrête de faire des films. Je me souviens plus à quelle date. Bon. Alors, là, on a utilisé. Alors, quand on a démarré le tournage du Mépris, bon, ça se passait en Italie, puisqu'on devait tourner en Italie et puis qu'on devait développer chez Technicolor. Bon, donc on est allé chez Technicolor et là, ils nous ont montré un procédé révolutionnaire qui était le Techniscope, qui était en 2 perfos. Bon, alors du coup, comme on était toujours avec Jean-Luc à la pointe du progrès et de tout ce nouveau, on a dit, bon, on va faire comme ça. Mais malheureusement, chez Technicolor, ils n'ont pas été foutus de nous donner une caméra pour pouvoir faire le film. Ce qui fait que donc on a tourné en Franscope. Le cinémascope, c'est un objectif normal qui est sur la caméra, et devant, on met un procédé révolutionnaire qui était le Techniscope, qui était en 2 perfos. Bon, alors du coup, comme on était toujours avec Jean-Luc à la pointe du progrès et de tout ce nouveau, on a dit, bon, on va faire comme ça. Mais malheureusement, chez Technicolor, ils n'ont pas été foutus de nous donner une caméra pour pouvoir faire le film. Ce qui fait que donc on a tourné en Franscope. Le cinémascope, c'est un objectif normal qui est sur la caméra, et devant, on met un objectif qu'on appelle un objectif cylindrique, parce qu'effectivement, il est cylindrique, qui permet de doubler la largeur. On appelle ça un hypergonard. Bon. Et alors, dans le cinémascope, à chaque fois qu'on change de point, il faut faire le point sur l'objectif et le point sur l'hypergonard. Et comme ça aurait été trop facile que ce soit dans le même sens, c'était gravé dans les 2 sens, ce qui fait qu'il fallait 2 personnes pour faire le point, qui se fait sur l'hypergonard. Bon. Et puis, il y a le système Franscope qui a été fait. Lui, alors, l'idée du Franscope, c'était de mettre l'objectif à réglé sur l'hyperfocale, c'est-à-dire en principe 15 mètres, et on touchait pas du tout l'objectif et on ne faisait le point que sur l'hypergonard. C'était une grosse simplicité. Bon, et quand on a fait donc le Mépris, on a utilisé ce système. Et on a utilisé également ce système-là pour la première fois avec un petit zoom C'est un système relativement simple, sauf que c'était les zooms, c'était très compliqué à faire on n'avait pas de viseur sur le fer, donc il fallait imaginer quand on faisait un petit bout de zoom quelle était l'image dans le viseur qu'on avait devant les yeux. C'était donc un truc très complexe.
Awesome to zoom without a lens.
Yeah, like as someone that actually does, like, you know, has taken classes and like actually get to work with cameras, like it sounds like a nightmare to actually have to zoom without a viewfinder where you can actually look into it and like see what you have to be like. So I'm guessing that it's here, like actually do the measurements, which is something that he talks about when he's talking about the color, right? Like the actual process of like printing it and then actually cutting the film together. Like you realize how much fucking harder it was to do all. I mean, they're all very technical processes, and like obviously that's why a lot of older filmmakers consider themselves like technicians rather than artists a lot of times. I mean, not directors like Godard, but like, you know, people like Fritz Lang, I'm sure if you talk to him about like what he considers himself, it would be far more technical than artistic. And
I would say James Cameron is probably like the modern equivalent of that with his development of you know, new camera technologies.
Yeah, but I mean, even in that capacity, right? Like you're kind of working on stuff on an actual computer, and you're working on, you know, like CGI and like different like digital filmmaking, rather than actually like sitting there and being like, hey, maybe it's time to cut these. I mean, maybe he worked that way for like Aliens or whatever, like when, you know, in the 80s and stuff. But like that's like,
or you know, even like the what is it, the inline VHS editing. I don't know if am I the only person here who has experience with that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That takes me back to my summer camp of 1995. I went to summer camp. I graduated from high school and then went to summer camp because like I knew I could never do that again. And I was like older than all the counselors and everything. They're like, why are you here? I'm like, dude, I just graduated from high school. I can never go to summer camp ever again for the rest of my life. So
and that's when you met Jean Luc Godard, you know?
Yes.
And you got to fly on the old Enterprise.
Yeah, no, actually that was an earlier summer camp when I fell off that swing. But that's a whole other story.
And he bought you tacos.
Taco. How did he say it?
Tacos.
It was like tacos.
Yeah.
Tacos.
Tacos.
Tic Tac.
But yeah, like it's kind of just fascinating for me as somebody to have watched him talk about that for as long as I did last night. As someone that kind of does editing for like a job and, you know, on and off, at least freelance, like, and does filmmaking when I can, like, you know, he goes out with a camera to at least shoot like people's live shows and stuff. Like it's kind of fascinating to have him be like, yeah, so like, you know, to get it colored the right way, like we had to go to a different country, number one, back to France after shooting the whole thing in Italy because we didn't like the thing. You have to buy its own version of film stock, and then from that point, like, then you have to actually sit back and like actually, like, you know, measure out what you want to zoom into. And, you know, even for like the scenes when it's the like the statues where they're shooting like the fake Fritz Lang movie, like you still have to go and like actually kind of mentally measure out how far the distances are. What's up, Karthik? Sorry, I'm in the middle of a thought. Like measure out.
No, please keep going. I'm like, yeah.
What you think the actual distances are, because you don't have a viewfinder to actually do that. And like, you know, he continues on with the second clip. I mean, we can watch the second clip if you want, but he actually shows you like the set that they're shooting in, and they talks about the tracking shot, like, you know, the shot that goes up and down, like it's a you know, like you're watching a seesaw, and like the actual process of the reason that they had to do that is because the apartment is too small to actually have the Technicolor camera they rented out. Well, it wasn't, I mean, it's the France color or whatever. Camera that they rented out is too big for the actual apartment, so like they needed to figure out a way to actually shoot both of them, and they came up with that idea of doing the dolly shot, you know, and tracking between them, because they actually couldn't fit the camera in a way that would let you see both actors at the same time at that table. So like it's kind of an intensive process of all of these different things. And he actually showed in the second clip, we'll watch that at the after party, I guess, but like he actually shows you like how small the apartment itself is as a set, and like the process of actually getting that camera into there is insane.
and the cameras are huge. I mean, we even see that in the film. Like there's
Yeah.
this beautiful, like the after we stare at her ass for a while and talk about her feet, you know, then there's that long shot of the camera slowly coming at you on the track, and it's you know, you really get to see like the guy turning the cranks and everything like that to adjust the level. It was fascinating to see that.
Yeah, and the fact that like first you see the tracking shot between them, obviously, and it's on the dolly, and you can tell it's on the dolly, but like obviously you don't see it because you know it's you're watching it as a viewer. But then at the end, to have them do like the exact same shot, but they're following Odysseus along the cliff line and following him down like this, and doing the same exact thing where he actually has to walk in tandem with the actual camera while going like this, is like kind of it's an interesting corollary to like this world where, you know, filmmaking, or the Hollywood style of filmmaking, I guess, is corroding this guy's very soul, and you know, you're kind of watching it through the eyes of a camera. Like it's an incredibly meta way to do this entire story. Like it's the story of corruption and degradation that you're actually watching as an audience member through the very same lens that they're making Odysseus, the Odyssey.
Since like, you know, I haven't said anything, and I just like hope everybody's doing well. I just wanted to just
we
like,
introduced you in the beginning, by the way.
I know. I mean, I just wanted to. I wanted to start with this line that he attributes to Bertolt Brecht, because I feel like you can't watch this movie without like, you know, reckoning with the fact that like Bertolt Brecht basically influences practically every element of it. And Fritz Lang like quotes this. It's kind of crazy that Fritz Lang, every time he speaks, he's constantly quoting somebody else. He's never like really sharing his own views, unless like, you know, they're very pithy, they're very short. But then he quotes this line by Bertolt Brecht, which says, "Every morning to earn my bread, I go to the market where lies are sold, and hopeful I get in line with the other sellers." And this guy asks, what's his name, Paul, what's that about? And Fritz Lang says, Hollywood. And it's kind of interesting that like the whole premise of the movie seems to be kind of like a shitting on the corporate, like basically the corporatization and the studio control that Hollywood brings to the table, in a way like it cucks the filmmaker quite literally, I think. And I think like that kind of is showcased in the fact that like he actually loses the woman to the producer, which is supposed to be like the kind of literal representation of his figurative, the filmmaker's figurative cucking in this movie.
And what I noticed, you know, the third time, I guess, watching it through in my life a couple of days ago is, and I've noticed this, like, you know, before this, but like how many times he seems to actually like talk about how he thinks, like, obviously he's giving his reading of the Odyssey the entire time. And he's like, oh, well, you know, it's because, you know, she cheated on him and he's upset and he lets her, you know, see the suitor. And then he's like, and then he kills her suitors. And he brings the gun with him and then doesn't have the heart or like the mind to pull the trigger, because he's kind of using her as a form of currency at the same time. So he's like, I'm jealous, but I'm also trying to better my career and my ambitions, which obviously he lies to himself and says this is about my own, you know, my own keeping a roof over both of our heads. But, you know, it's not. It's about his own prestige. And in that way, it kind of is reminiscent of like Barton Fink, where throughout the movie he's like, you know, talking about how real he is, and he's kind of, and realness is a topic throughout this too, right? Like what's reality, what's fiction. And Fritz Lang talks about, you know, his reading of the Odyssey is that there's no like they're not going against nature, they're not fighting nature, right? Like they're living in harmony with nature, and it's an understanding that this is the way the world is. And even when it's like a myth where they're fighting the gods, like the gods themselves are the natural forces in the world.
Yeah,
and Hollywood is a, I guess my last thing is Hollywood's kind of a corruption of that.
Yeah, I mean, like the place where the place where like he also kind of constantly the fights that he has with her, he also seem to be about the. It's kind of interesting because like the fights especially go back and forth between like her encouraging him and her discouraging him, which also like reminds me of this kind of interaction between I don't know if anybody's read this, but like between F. Scott Fitzgerald's like characters in The Beautiful and the Damned, where they basically have this kind of quality of the guy wants to just like be a very existential character, like go where the road takes me kind of person. And the woman is also like that, but then like the guy occasionally has like these spurts of ambition, and the woman kind of like is supposed to weigh him down from pursuing his goals or something like that, which is kind of like what F. Scott Fitzgerald writes in that book, because it's supposed to be a kind of portrait of his relationship with Zelda and stuff like that too. So you kind of see a little bit of that, where he is getting, like, the Paul character is getting a little bit of these aspirations. He gets the germ, but then he has to pursue them. And then he kind of ends up losing his kind of, so to say, control over his wife because of his pursuit of his ambitions and success and stuff like that. So
yeah, and he lets her get away without like really fighting for her, because he's kind of like he's kind of left to the lame, but also left to the point where he's kind of resigned to the fact that she's a kind of currency for his moving forward, which makes it all that much more, I guess, ironic in a a universal sense that they're killed, and then he doesn't really get anything out of it. In the end, he just lost his wife, and this guy's dead, and like, I mean, Hollywood itself, I guess, has crashed into the car, and like you don't even see them die, so it's like it's kind of just fascinating that that's the fact. And all of these questions, I think, throughout the movie, that, I mean, Fritz Lang kind of quotes a bunch of stuff where he's like, like, this is the real, like, this is nature. We're kind of just, we're giving into nature and we're not fighting it. And the human relationship to nature is obviously corrupted in itself. And like the Greek relationship to nature, which I like, who knows if, but like the Greek relationship to nature is the pure one, because they've just accepted the fact that the forces of nature are like these omnipresent deities. And I don't know, it's kind of a commentary, I think, on cultural forces themselves.
What's really fascinating is also, and I don't know if this would be a spoiler, because I'll just like go to the extent of saying that their death in the end, we
already watched the clip where they show the.
Oh, okay.
But it was in French, so our audio listeners didn't know that until right now.
Okay, so it seems like somewhere like 3/4 into the movie, Fritz Lang, actually, they have this conversation where he's walking back, and this is right before he catches them, making out or whatever. And like Fritz Lang basically tells this guy Paul that like murder is no resolution. So when he says like you kill the suitors, and then he says but murder is no resolution, and it's kind of a very cool meta statement, because
she's also reading the book in the bathtub. That's a book of his supposedly his quotes.
Yeah.
It's the same, so it's like the same kind of theme that like, if you murder your wife or something, and you murder like her suitors, and then you murder her, like you don't have the wife anymore. It's not like you resolve the problem where you want
right.
Like,
and then in the end, exactly. So it's kind of like the movie ends on the note of them both dying, which is in a way you could argue that it's the director or the scriptwriter, the filmmaker, killing the wife in order to liberate Odysseus or whatever, but that doesn't really liberate him either, because and to add to that, the death is something that occurs in such an impossible fashion. Like, you can't die like that. That's a very stupid car crash. And I actually, one of the things I remember last when I watched it in like film class, I watched it with commentary, and like basically the ending is supposed to be a kind of sign of an impossible kind of ending, which is that like you can't really get hit by two trucks that are reversing into your car, which is absurd. And that's the whole point.
And they also don't fly out of, like, they're just dead in the car, like, you know what I mean, like the car, the impact, like you'd normally fly out of the top, because that's the whole thing with having like,
and they also like face opposite directions. So it's like if two trucks hit you, if anything, they should move in the opposite direction, which means that they'll have to collide with each other. But in this case, like, they actually diverge. So that's like an impossible accident, which shows that
unless they hit each other and just fell off to the side.
I had a friend that died in a convertible a few years ago, and like he flew like 15 feet like out of the car. Like, for it to just kind of be like a simple like I know that's kind of just a very dark thing to just use as an example, but like for it to just kind of have them just both lying down in that, like, they didn't go, like the car's not even like completely totaled. You know what I mean? Like they've just hit the thing, and he leaves it as a point where you're kind of almost looking at them like sleeping. It seems like, you know what I mean? Like they're not. It's not like this. I mean, he has like a little bit of blood around them or whatever, but it's not like a death that you're like watching this whole thing transpire, and they're actually like crushed in the car. Like they're just kind of Manichean, I guess, or whatever you'd want to call it.
Yeah, so sorry to hear about your friend, man. Like that's first of all, I have to say that, and
yeah, no, I mean, it was a really bad thing. But like I'm just saying, like in the capacity of like that not being a death that you can, you know, and I've been in a car accident that was pretty bad too. Like that's not how it happened. Like there's no situation where you're in a car, like two people are dead in the car and they're just kind of like this, you know what I mean? Like it's a grotesque transfixion, I guess, or like a transformation of the human body. Like, and there's none of that. They've just kind of hit a semi truck. And
well, yeah. I mean, it reminds me of that Samuel Fuller quote where he's just like, I lie with my films. You know, when somebody gets killed in war, like their body parts fly everywhere. But when I kill somebody on screen, they just fall over.
Right.
And which is what war films have kind of tried to, like, no pun intended, blow apart. Like some of the most grotesque and really like gritty deaths, I think, are like non-theatrical deaths are in war films, because it's, you know, they're trying to show you the reality of it. And I guess that is the point in this. Like they're not trying to show you the actual revealed reality of any of this, because they're just kind of, it's like, well, they're dead now. You don't get anything. It's the Willy Wonka, like, you get nothing.
You get nothing. Good day, sir.
Your wife's dead, bro. What are you gonna do? And then Fritz Lang really asks him, and you can't really tell. I mean, assumably he's heard that the wife and Jack Palance's producer Jeremy Prokofovich or whatever has got, like, yeah, presumably you've heard that they've both gotten killed, or they've heard in the story, but like they don't. There's no acknowledgement of it, right? Like he's just on his way out, and he's like, "Well, I guess I'm leaving," and he's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do now?" And he's like, I don't know, maybe work on my play. And he's like, well, I hope I, see you around, man. Okay, yeah. Let's finish this film. And it's almost like it's almost like you're watching a machine, I think, and you can just kind of swap out the parts in the machine. It doesn't really matter in the end. Like Fritz Lang is just going to be working on his movie, and Paul's going to be doing whatever he's doing. Like I don't know, fucking. He's gonna find another 28-year-old and just and say, hey, you want to live in this apartment? I'm a playwright. Like there's no emotional resonance in that sense. I mean, he feels it for a second when he brings the gun with him and then gets handed the gun, but like they're living in this fantasy world, I guess, where these things don't have the emotional resonance that they do in real life. Like you'd be horrified if you lost your 28-year-old wife and like, like it would be a devastating experience. He doesn't seem devastated by it as he's walking away. He just seems like, well, I guess I'm off to my next adventure.
But that's
going on 29.
But that's like also the kind of, I think, the cinematic representation of an existential philosophy, I suppose, because he does like say in his interpretation of Odysseus, like he asked a simple question, Ulysses, simple question of the Odyssey. Like, why is Ulysses even traveling? Why does he not go home? Why doesn't he return for 10 years? And he says he doesn't return for 10 years because he doesn't want to. And that's like a very interesting kind of way to, I mean, it seems like a simple explanation, but that's what existentialism is. Basically, it's that like you get to decide ultimately. And I feel like in a kind of way, every character does that, like, except for maybe the American guy, which is kind of strange. And I don't know if this is like too much of a tangential discussion. I was like reminded of the movie Dreamers, in which like I feel like there's a Bertolucci's movie, in which like there's a slightly more favorable portrayal of an American. There also like an American kind of interferes in a French relationship, which in the Dreamers context, it's like an incestuous kind of twin sibling relationship, which supposedly doesn't involve sex. But in this case, like it's an American interfering in a marriage. But in both of those contexts, like there's a severe tension between like the characters wanting to like be with each other and be French, whatever that is, or which means like this existential like I go where the road takes me, but I still get to be the master of my own fate kind of thing. but also on the other hand, like the American kind of comes in and actually gives these people a sort of reason to exist and like or purpose. Because like without the American coming in, they actually kind of they're almost bored with each other. So it's like he comes and makes their lives exciting in a kind of way.
Well, she openly expresses that she's bored over and over again throughout the movie, but you can I guess project onto the fact that she's just like and you're 28, which I am too, so I guess I'm not.
I'm gonna be 29 though in a few weeks.
But like I think that, which Kristina, I want to get your thoughts on some of this stuff too, because you haven't talked that much this episode, but
too much on we over there in that corner.
Yeah. Well, also, by the way, guys, for those who can see us, my skeleton Frank says hello. He's my bisexual line skeleton. But yeah, I really did enjoy this film. I also I just think about like Bridget Bardot and the fact that she was like this phenomenon in the 60s, and then she just ends her career by like 1973, and she kind of like gets away from like the public eye and whatnot. Like it's kind of sad because she's considered still like a fixture. I mean, every day I still see like girls do like Bridget Bardot like makeup tutorials and stuff like that. Like her look is very iconic, especially like when it comes to like French women in makeup.
Yeah, well, and I'll grab some of this in between when we do the after party in a little bit and this episode. There's a film that was shot concurrently to this film where it's I can't think of the director off the top of my head because he was like traveling with them and he made two films. He made one film that's Godard and Bridget Bardot, and he kind of filmed them working together. But there's a second film called Paparazzi, which the island they were filming on in Capri. Lady Gaga, I guess, stole the title of this film, but the island they were working on in Capri, you couldn't get there except by boat. And I guess she was so popular and such an icon of sexuality, like such a like a figure of beauty or whatever, that people would actually go take their boats, like their speedboats from the Italian mainland, and actually speedboat to this island in Capri and like try to get a glimpse of her. And you couldn't actually get onto the island without like journalists and stuff, and you couldn't actually get onto the island without actually being allowed to, because it's very small, like you see it in the movie a bunch of times. So this guy kind of filmed the paparazzi filming her, and the process of like how many actual stories they got out of it, and how much she was shown in magazines during this time period. And like it's kind of amazing because like you have to think about like just kind of the fact that it's just kind of an island in the middle of nowhere, and they're actually taking their boats like, oh, I heard she's on this island, let me actually go there and try to get pictures to sell to magazines.
How do you feel about like her, Bridget Bardot, especially because she's so iconic and like inseparable from the fact that she's a French actress? How do you feel about her and Camille as the character as being a metaphor for French cinema itself?
Kristina, let's hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I mean, like, especially with like the French New Wave cinema, there's always like she represented like the staple for that in my opinion. Like whenever you think
as Godard, I mean, at least in retrospect, has kind of come to, which is interesting. Yeah. But no, keep going. I'm just saying, like, it's interesting that it's a they're both kind of the staples of this era of French cinema.
Yeah, and like it seems like a lot of actresses were trying to replicate what she was able to do. Like when people think of her, they just think of just like a look. But no, she could act. Like she could act her ass off. Like us Americans don't really think of her as an actress. We think of her as just like this image.
Star, right? Yeah.
Like this star, this image, this model, and nothing more. But like if you're someone who's deep into like French cinema, especially like New Wave era in the 60s, you understand that she was more than just a pretty face.
She's still alive too, by the way.
Yeah.
She's 87, but she's living.
And she should come on the show.
She's apparently being very racist and like calling like indigenous people savages and stuff.
Yeah,
she's like deeply Islamophobic and
she's hella bigoted too.
Well,
Well-
we won't have Karthik on when she comes on the show.
Yeah.
Well, all of the people, they don't have us French customs. They do not make the cinema where you show the bottom.
I want to second what Kristina said, though. I do think Bardot is very good in this film. You know, and it's not just, I mean, she's obviously extremely attractive, right? But she also, just the way she conveys expressions through her eyes and whatnot. I think there's a lot going on there with her character.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of really horribly bookend this, I watched Bad Girls with Drew Barrymore and Madeline Stowe and it's a Western.
Why do you pollute this podcast every time you open your mouth?
But the reason why I bring that up is like you know because like you know at this time I you know had a absolute monster crush on Drew Barrymore, which is why I rewatched the movie, because I remember liking the movie back in the day, and I'm like, oh no, I just like Drew Barrymore. But the thing is though, is like Drew Barrymore is no Bridget Bardot. Like there isn't that the nuance to the performance. You know, Drew Barrymore was just to stand there and look pretty and occasionally pull out a gun and shoot somebody. But you know, whereas you know, Bridget Bardot has like a very meaty part and really delivers in the subtlety of the performance.
Ooh.
You know what's funny? You know when
She's
she
the part of
dated.
a pen.
You know when. Oh, you know when she dated.
Maybe not come on the show.
You know when? Well, that would be like your other friend that came on the show, and now post the like the pro the pro DeSantis things.
Hey, she was a great guest. That's all
She
I'm
was
gonna
a
say.
great guest. She was a great guest talking about fantasy. But you know, I'm glad there was no DeSantis character in that movie. No, so Fabrizio, you know, from the Strokes, like the drummer, before he dropped out of college to be with the Strokes like full time, like before they had officially blown up, I guess, he was in the sculpture program with my mom at SUNY New Paltz, like in town, and it was when he was dating Drew Barrymore, and I guess they came to Bacchus, like the place that I go to drag shows, but like this is before they had drag shows there, and she came out one night like at the end of the semester or something, and like was getting drunk at the fucking local bar. And my mom told me that story. It was like, because when I was a kid, I had a crush on Drew Barrymore, and she's like, "Oh, I've met Drew Barrymore. She came to the end celebration for our sculpture program," and I was like, "And you didn't tell me?" And she's
Yeah,
like,
and
"Really,
Drew
really
Barrymore
funny."
getting drunk at the bar could be like from any time from when she was like 8 to like now. So
Oh,
Well,
Drew
no, but she
Barrymore.
was-
Come on, movie night extravaganza, so we can talk about Charlie's Angels.
But this was, I mean, she wasn't like an adult. Like this is, you know, but
Yeah.
I was young enough that like I was just like, but you didn't tell me she was in town. Well, I was like, you were like 6. Like, why would I have told you that?
come on, when I was 6, I knew about Drew Barrymore. So come on, ET, yo.
No,
Man,
I
she
meant like,
really
why
does
would she?
preserve her family's legacy, though. You can tell she
But-
appreciates where she came from.
We should, you know, and in a little bit we should go to the, you know, after party and we can have all these fun conversations. But you know, Bridget Bardot, I think absolutely kills it in this. It's disappointing to find out that she's a Marine Le Pen supporter, and
She
you
called her
know,
the Joan of Arc of French. Like, what the
yeah, I wish she was, because then we wouldn't have to deal with her anymore. She'd be burned. at the stake.
I think she actually even went on trial, I think, for like using like anti-Muslim slurs.
Yeah.
So,
Like,
yeah, we at Movie Night Extravaganza do approve of burning Marie Le Pen at the stake.
I feel
like,
like
you know-
I feel like that's one of those things I tweet out at 3 a.m. and give Conan heartburn from the official Twitter account. Which I should say, by the way, I'm sure it's too late. Well, no, it's not too late, because this is, you know, Conan's going over on the West Coast.
On the West Coast, yeah.
Yeah, so he's in Portland tonight, Portland, Oregon, I think, and he's playing with McCluskey, and you know, he sent us the 2 events, so it's 6 o'clock there. I guess you could probably, if you haven't heard about it yet, you know, you could probably still hear about it. I was gonna wait for you to do, but it feels like me mentioning Conan, I should shoehorn this in. Yeah, so tonight he's in Portland, and tomorrow he's in Seattle. Tonight he's playing with McCluskey. I know that. I don't know if the other show he is, but
Yeah,
you know,
I can't remember off the top of my head because I didn't write that down. But yeah,
well, I just took the message you didn't say, but
and I get to fill in for him.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, we should also mention.
No, she's feeling no.
Since we're talking about Conan, might as well just throw this in here too. Check out if you're missing Conan right now, and you need your little Conan fix. I recommend checking out the Protonic Reversal episode 210 with Devo's Jerry Casale, where they go over 10 years worth of song by song of that Devo did. So we're good archive one to dig up and listen to.
It was cute when he came on Chapo recently, Jerry Casale, and then Conan was like, "That was my guess," and then they shouted out Conan, like they actually said, like, "Oh, I got most of my information from Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Like, here's 2 episodes." Like, and Conan was just so appreciative that that like he was really shouted out by Chris from Chapo. So I thought that was a really funny and kind of cute moment.
That's very cool, man. Yeah, that's
really. Oh, thank you.
That's good for Conan. Nice. I mean, speaking of music, I wanted to ask. There are so many places where this like really kind of sad, somber, melancholic violin.
Bridget Bigot.
So it's like the music that plays whenever they kind of have these whatever like profound conversations. It's almost like the music is making fun of the conversation. If you notice, right? Like which kind of I don't know who scored the music. I don't know if this was like super intentional, because it does seem like the music is like overly dramatic,
and it's also cut weird too, like almost like it's sampled at one point, because like it swells, calms down, and then cuts right back to the swell. It's like a proto hip hop DJ.
Well, it's not just it definitely is purposely ironic, because it's not just the actual like music that's ironic. It's the actual shot where it's in between the scenes where he leaves and he puts her in his car originally, right? Like he puts her in Jeremy Kurokovich or whatever his fucking last name. I'm not good with Polish names. I'm not even gonna try with Polish names. I'm anti-Polish, but like that character, like they drive away in the car and they show the super ironic, dramatic zoom-in scene again, where it's the giant Fritz Lang sculpture of Odysseus turning his head, and they show, and the one behind us actually, but they show the head turn, and it's as the music swells up, but it's during this very like nonchalant, almost like, oh, I'll take the cab, you go in the car, and it's giving this weighty feeling of the gods, this feeling of, I guess, Greek realistic superiority or something that they attribute to all like myths, like the mythos, I guess, of it. Like it's attributing that to these very low key scenes. And so I think that it definitely, I think you've hit on it 100%. It's like ironic purposely.
It's like the movie kind of tries to constantly keep you at a distance from it, which is what I think like takes us back to Bertolt Brecht also, which is the fact that like you should not get too attached to the characters or the actual plot line, and develops anything parasocial, because you have to constantly remember that you're watching just like characters on a screen, and that's supposed to be a form of solidarity actually, right? Like because like it is that solidarity with the viewer, where you're kind of like also constantly aware of the fact that Brigitte Bardot is, for example, a very attractive but also like a very popular actress and stuff like that, and you're also made aware of the fact that Fritz Lang is like he's also like a cameo technically, although like he's a full-time like he's a featured actor, but in a kind of way it's like you are aware of all of these people, and so you are kind of also not taking them as seriously as you should, so you're constantly at a distance from the material, I think, and it's like very intentional in that sense.
Yeah, and these are all kind of corollaries of different emotions within the process of cinema. I mean, I kind of alluded to it in the intro, which we can watch again during the after party, I guess, the little intro that I made for this episode, which I've been doing lately, where I just record myself and I end up hating my own voice because it takes a while to edit it. But like one of the things is that, Godard felt like the American, Hollywood projects American values throughout the world. And like, it's a form of, I guess, it's almost like a form of cultural imperialism. Like, wherever American cinema goes, wherever Hollywood goes. And he makes fun of this in Breathless too, with the boogie, and you see the picture of Humphrey Bogart and everything. The process of that, I guess, corrupting French values, corrupting European values, remaking everything in the American image. And you see that throughout this whole entire movie, right? Like, he's been completely corrupted by American values by the end of it. And it's very much, I think, a statement of that, like, just getting involved with this world of Hollywood, and whether it's, shooting in Italy, but like through an American director, like wherever Americans put up the money, whatever Americans touch gets completely corroded. But yeah, I want to go to the in a minute. I want to go to the one-liners, but I'm going to try to pull up one more clip of Fritz Lang and fucking Jean Luc Godard going at it. Hold on.
I think we should, improvise right here while Forrest is doing that, but I don't have anything.
Could have just gone with the Larry David thing, I guess. Dun, 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 dun.
Et là, moi, ce que je ne peux pas changer la porte. Moi, j'ai besoin que tout existe, que les murs existent vraiment, que la porte existe. Alors, comme ça existe, je dis, je ne peux pas le changer.
Mais écoute,
ce que je peux changer, ce sont les gens. Ou alors, si la porte ne me plaît pas, ben, je vais chercher un autre appartement dans un autre quartier.
Oui, je sais.
Par exemple, finalement, vous vous souvenez de l'appartement à Rome dans lequel on a tourné Le Mépris.
Alors il faut dire quelque chose. Quand j'ai vu cette scène-là, alors il faut dire la vérité. En ce cas, je comprends très bien que vous avez improvisé. Moi, je trouve cette scène extraordinaire. C'est un de plus...
Non, mais par exemple,
alors maintenant, je parle. Je crois que c'est un des meilleures scènes que j'ai jamais vues. Et vous savez, je ne vous flatte pas. Non, mais non, vous savez que je crois que vous êtes un... Alors, vous savez ce que je pense de vous. Mais dans cette scène, j'ai compris pourquoi vous improvisez quelquefois. Mais vous avez une grande vision toujours. Pourquoi est-ce que c'est nécessaire de voir tout? Vous savez, c'est une vision, ce n'est pas nécessaire. C'est une chose que je ne comprends pas tout à fait.
Peut-être que moi, j'aime mieux m'intéresser à l'ensemble d'une chose plutôt qu'à une chose particulière.
Oui, vous savez, moi, je crois, mais alors, on pourrait discuter de ça pour des nuits et des nuits. Je crois quand on fait, comme moi, fait un film, je vois l'ensemble, je vois tout. Et j'essaie de faire une scène pour que sans scène après,
oui.
Je commence ici avec une idée qui a la culmination ici.
Oui.
Et je crois quand on improvise,
ça c'est sûrement...
Ça c'est très difficile.
Oui, c'est pas peu. Ou c'est mauvais, oui, oui.
Ça, c'est... Alors je ne dis pas que c'est meilleur que le vôtre, que c'est meilleur que le vôtre.
Mais peut-être... j'ai au départ, disons, peut-être un point de vue qui est plus le documentaire, et au départ, vous avez un point de vue qui est plus la fiction, et puis ensuite, ça revient, il faut les deux ensemble.
Oui, je crois que vous avez raison.
Shut up, I'm talking. I love that.
Well, it's someone that knows that they have the power in that situation. Completely owning it. I mean, people are, if you ever dealt with like people that are extremely narcissistic and I guess fully self-aware artists, it's kind of intensive.
But he's right though. Both of them are, I guess, like in a kind of way, completely warranted in saying the things that he's saying. But I also caught like Fritz Lang saying that like he plants an idea and he lets that culminate. I thought that the whole the movie actually begins with the producer Jack Palance laughing at the skinny dipping scene where at the beginning there's an actress who's seen skinny dipping and he's like just like immediately like gleefully laughing, and the movie does and the movie does culminate with Brigitte Bardot doing the same thing. So in a kind of way, it's almost like foreshadowing the fact that like the actress in this movie is going to do that in the end, and it's supposed to be a very sensational sort of moment, right? Because she's a starlet in a kind of way. But at the same time,
it's almost like Greek mythology where they set up like some kind of not Achilles heel, but like almost like a morality tale for whatever the character is, and they're like, this is their weakness, or this is what's going to end up being the most corrosive during the story. And for him, it's his absolutely there's just horny consumption of everything,
right?
Everything, like he's as Tony Soprano says, he's King Midas in reverse. Everything he touches turns to shit. Or I guess maybe everything he touches turns to gold. So either way, in the same kind of sense, like it tarnishes everything it touches. So for him to kind of be looking at it, and I absolutely love being able to do this finally. So way back, I don't know if you were if you see this episode, Carly, but like very early on, we had Doug Lane on, and we were talking about Local Hero, and Andy's. Are you just gonna do the Q-tip right on camera?
What was that?
Oh, Kristina was just doing the full Q-tip right on camera.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, we are talking about a movie which is like breaking conventions in every frame. So like you're just honoring the legacy of an artist who basically did that. So
I guess also she's cosmopolitics now. She can actually bring Q-tips with her to the
yeah.
But
you were saying Local Heroes.
Yeah, so Local Hero, the thing that, and then we'll jump to Letterboxd one-liners right after this. But the thing that Andy came up with in the end is that he decided they all turned into mermaids in the end of the movie.
I said that they left it open to interpret it that way.
And Doug Lane was like, no, that's not what happened. That doesn't make any sense.
So, he's like, what kind of drugs are you on? I think was the question.
So the after party name that I have for tonight is J Underworld finally gets a mermaid, and it's Jack Palance like this, where he's gleefully laughing.
Nice.
But Letterboxd one-liners. Let's hit this.
Alrighty, so Letterboxd, a place where film lovers, film haters, film curious folks gather around to talk about films that they loved, that they hated, that turned them on, that made them laugh, made them cry, discuss films, review films, and make a little watch list. And without further ado, here are the infamous Letterboxd one-liners for Contempt. Forrest, do the thing. This is kind of a horror movie for me because one of my biggest fears is people annoying me when I'm trying to read in the bath. 3 stars.
By the way, I wish you had worn like a black wig and tried to do the Brigitte Bardot wig look.
I don't have that wig.
Yeah, well, not that one. That wig is not a very good one. They're not sending their best wigs.
No. Sometimes all you need in a movie is a girl, a gun, and a different interpretation of Homer's Odyssey that unknowingly changed the trajectory of both the protagonist's life.
Yeah, but it kind of literally is Chekhov's gun, or the opposite, whatever. Like it's the red herring version of because the gun does not go off in the end. You know what I mean?
No, I was expecting like a double murder at the end.
He's breaking conventions to the point where he literally breaks the Chekhov's gun rule in the third act.
I honestly believe now we're living in the good timeline of Jean Luc Godard can pick up a camera and make banger after banger like this.
What does it say that he's passed away now, though?
Ugh.
Are we now not the good timeline? Well, it had to happen. I mean, he made it to 91. I don't know.
And this was written in what, 2017? Am I reading that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
so he put out two more movies after that. So I mean, this is the good timeline.
Right.
I feel
Only 2 stars, man.
Jesus
Well,
Christ.
she feels contempt. That's the point of the.
Yes.
Don't forget, the gods have not created men, men have created gods.
You gotta say it. Don't forget, gods have not created men. Men have created gods.
I don't do French accents.
No, he does a German accent, but
Whatever.
Same thing.
BRB, mad at all women.
Adam Friedland, the old Cumtown, the old Cumtown guy. They just transitioned Cumtown to now it's called the Adam Friedland Show, right?
Yeah.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, I guess because Stav left.
Okay. And he brought all the cum.
Yeah, but those are the Letterboxd one-liners for Contempt. You can find all of us on Letterboxd. And he's doing all the films that no one wants to watch, but you find some rare gems, to say the least.
Hey, I will say, One of the Dead, highly recommend.
Karthik, are you on Letterboxd?
Yeah, I'm just not very active, but I am.
Yeah. And of course, Forrest is over there at Moon Knight Extravaganza reviewing the films that we cover.
Mostly, you know. Like I end up watching them over and over again rather than watching new films, which I should say I'm sure we've all added this to the watch list if we keep. I don't usually use that feature, but we're talking about Nope next week, Jordan Peele's new movie. So
you can't say yep to Nope. Wait.
So you know, I think that's a movie that we've all really wanted to see and haven't yet. Unless somebody has and cheated. So we're going to be doing that. And that's I'm excited for that because I really wanted to see that too. We were originally going to do the other Jordan Peele. What is it? Us? The other Jordan Peele movie. Yeah. So we were originally going to do that, which is a movie that I like a lot. But then Jean Luc Godard died. So we're doing this episode. But we were going to ready ourselves for that way. But I guess we'll do that in the future when Conan gets back.
Yeah, well, it gives me a chance to rewatch The Crow and appreciate Michael Wincott, star of Nope and The Crow. So there we go.
All right. Well, Andy, let's
Oh yeah, do the plugs. You're watching us right now on YouTube, so please do all the YouTube things: like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell if you haven't already. And the big ask for you is to watch the video to the end. You get to hear a great Conan Neutron song, and that helps us have other movie fans find our content. So, please do that. Please, follow us on Twitter, Movie Night Extravaganza. You can find out what's going on. We have a Twitter community. If you want to join, hit one of us up. I'm sure we can figure out how to do that.
And we also tweet it out we tweet it out once in a while. Maybe I'll start putting it in the show description. The link to join that.
Yeah, but it's I post polls. I try to post polls before the episodes to get an idea of like what people have seen the movie. How many people have seen the movie. So it's kind of interesting. It was like a 50-50 split. Although no one because I split yes into oui and yes in French. So. But yeah, it's we're building something there. It's really good. There's also a Discord. I don't know what we're doing with that. It exists.
We gotta do more. You know what would be really smart is for us to do like
something on Discord,
like
watch parties.
Yeah,
watch
parties
the movie
of the films that we
Yeah, I've talked about doing that before. I've done that with Ben. We did that a couple times for stuff. We did it for Nomadland. We did it for Judas and the Black Messiah. So I'd be down to do that in the future and try to figure out that.
Yeah. Maybe we could do it with our Patreon, which we have a Patreon. You can sign up. Smooth transition there. Sign up and like our Patreon. Support our Patreon. There we go. Conan's not here. We plugged a few of his things, but I did not plug his albums. You can get the most recent Secret Friends album, Dangerous Nomenclature, and Action Chief's Just the Solos right off Bandcamp. So make sure y'all do that. Kristina, who do you got any big plans this week with your Twitches?
Well, they banned gambling on Twitch, so I'm probably gonna after the after party go stream again. I'm trying to stream as much as I can before I dog sit on Friday. I have a side hustle, guys. I house sit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy you didn't have to house sit or dog sit during this, because I'm glad you came on for it and didn't have to. Because this would have been weird if it's 4 dudes talking.
Yeah.
Talking about
I'm a virgin bigot, like.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with her voting for Marine Le Pen. I mean, it's.
I guess she's a MAGA communist because she did work with Godard, but also.
Stupid.
Yo, Bridget Bardot, Jackson Hinkle, 2024.
All right, I'm sold. So, JG, you do Parallax Views. Who's coming up this week?
That's a good question. I'm trying to get some episodes out this week, but I'm still in the process of editing. So I have one with Andrew Basevich coming up from the Quincy Institute. So we're going to be talking about his new book, Paths of Dissent, about soldiers who dissent from war. So that'll be really interesting.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds fascinating.
I have a few movie episodes coming up for the Halloween season, so there's always that.
Yes,
so
those are always fun.
For we're doing zombies for I don't think we've figured out guests yet, but we're doing a zombie month for.
I know
October.
Conan told me.
Yeah, so you should come on for one of those. I think
Are you doing Shaun of the Dead?
I don't think we're doing Shaun of the Dead, but we're doing Train to Busan. I think we're doing Night of the Living Dead. We're doing. I don't remember what the other two are.
Are you doing Zombieland also? The Woody Harrelson one.
I like that movie, but I don't think we have any comedy.
Yeah, I don't think that made the cut. I mean, there's a couple like Juan of the Dead didn't make the cut either. But I also hadn't seen it until. Oh my God, Forrest, you're gonna love Juan of the Dead. You need to watch Juan of the Dead.
I'm sure, but
they keep talking about the special period. But anyways, it's a Cuban zombie film.
Yeah, I know. I saw your messages about.
Yeah.
Oh, we are doing Shaun of the Dead. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, and I think we have.
Actually, we're doing both Shaun of the Dead and Zombieland, I guess. Zombieland. I love Zombieland. That's So we're doing Night of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead, Dead Alive, which I guess is different than Dead or Alive.
Dead. It's just as batshit, but in very different ways.
Shaun of the Dead, Zombieland, and Train to Busan. So.
I don't know if you've watched this movie called Warm Bodies by any chance.
Yes.
That's also like a zombie movie. Or is it a vampire movie? I forgot. I think it's a zombie movie.
It is a zombie movie.
Yeah. It's supposed to be a zombie, love story or something like that? Yeah.
I remember when that came out. I don't think I ended up seeing it, but I
yeah. I'm just like, big nope. It looked like Twilight, but with zombies.
I would say it's a little grittier than Twilight. I suppose like Twilight is kind of like a gold standard for complete, just like
Frank Miller's Twilight. Is that?
Yeah.
All right, this is definitely after party stuff.
Absolutely. But yeah, Karthik, we have not talked about Alien Encounters or Revolutionary Tracks. So what you got coming up on either of those?
So Revolutionary Tracks, we did like something close to what you could call a season, I suppose, and then like we're probably gonna be back soon, maybe next week, if not this week itself, and mainly just like trying to get more musical guests, trying to get more. There's a lot of people who are trying to infuse revolutionary politics into hip hop. We got a lot of the usual suspects who have made the rounds on Left Media. And I think like the next step for us is to like start reaching out to bigger artists and like get into more maybe even like mainstream adjacent spaces.
You guys should have Jerry Casale from Devo on.
Yeah, I've never heard anything by him, so I guess like I'll have to check.
You never heard any Devo songs?
No, I haven't.
Whip It?
No.
So when the problem comes along. I've been on since we had which I've listened to Devo like since I was like younger, but I've been listening to a lot of Devo lately.
Freedom of Choice.
Jocko Homo is honestly one of my fucking favorite songs, and the fact that he actually sang it like mimed singing it on our actual stream was fucking so awesome. When he was telling the story about Sun Ra.
What we definitely want to have though is I would love to have him, which would be John Hinckley, the guy who shot Reagan.
Oh, I might be able to figure that out.
Why don't you get him on movie nights or something? I think also.
Well, I mean that would so
not Taxi. Drive no.
Gab who got
Silence of the Lambs.
Gab who co-hosts Red Flag with us. Her one of her best friends is actually doing his booking. And so we haven't been able to figure out getting him on because I don't know, we just haven't had any guests on in our 11 episodes.
You should get him on for a Ronald Reagan movie. Or something like that.
He doesn't want to talk about that stuff anymore. He wants to be positive.
When if we do like a biography of like a artist, because he's really into music.
We got to find a Jodie Foster film.
Bring him on for Walk the Line or something. You know,
you guys are awful.
No, whatever.
No,
but
on a serious note, I definitely think that it'd be cool to have John Hinckley be the sort of I don't know, leftist subculture hero of sorts, as his on his comeback.
Yeah.
He's literally he's literally kind of been pushed forward by what's his name, Max of Eve 6-2. So maybe there's a potential there to create some sort of subculture out of it. But definitely, John Hinckley, Immortal Technique, these are all like people that I'm definitely going for. And also like with that, like
Technique on, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's hard because like, you know, it's more like you have to go through the agents. Like now you're not talking about like directly reaching the guest, which is like, you know, thankfully when you're reaching out to leftists and stuff, like it's usually like, you know, you directly reach out to the person, you can pretty much DM somebody. But like Immortal Technique is so huge that you'd have to probably go through the label or something like that. So
yeah,
but he does follow Left Flank Vets though, for what it's worth. So
you might be able to DM him. He also bullied Lin-Manuel Miranda and threw him into a dumpster, and I'm assuming that's why Lin-Manuel Miranda is the way he is.
I mean, he probably deserves it.
Mortal Technique, Chris Hayes, and Lin-Manuel Miranda went to the same high school or middle school or whatever in the Bronx.
I remember he probably deserved it for whatever.
I remember before Hamilton came out, Chris Hayes brought on Lin-Manuel Miranda as a guest to perform one of his songs.
They went to middle school or whatever together.
That's
but
wild.
we should go to final thoughts. It's time to jump to the after party in a second. Karthik, let's hear some final thoughts, and we'll keep having the discourse in the after party. So if there's anything you don't think of, it's all right.
All right, great. So I think like Contempt. Well, so from when I watched it the first time, I've always like known this to be a standing example of Brecht's alienation effect, which is basically that like there is a style of theater that Bertolt Brecht introduced where the whole point is to have the audience constantly distanced from the actions and never feeling that emotional investment, so that like they at once receive the effect of the story and the narrative, but at the same time they're able to retain the critical thinking the entire time. And also this becomes an opportunity to introduce a lot of like political concepts like class differences and like philosophical worldview clashes, conflicts and stuff like that, which you can think about more clearly. And I think like Contempt basically lays it out in the fundamental conflict, which is which kind of like he ironizes beautifully, where he talks about like Ulysses, like Paul, the character, although he's supposed to be the stand-in for Ulysses, he kind of like says Ulysses is not a modern day neurotic. He's a simple, extraordinary man who lived a simple life. But at the same time, you're making a movie where you are kind of like introducing Ulysses into a modern day neurotic context. So in a kind of way, Contempt completely, I think the contempt that, it refers to, the movie refers to, is a contempt for the kind of corruption and, as you point out, Forrest, that Hollywood brings into the picture, and like return to a form of like expression where film as art, every scene as akin to a painting, every shot as an akin to a painting, and like every bit of the narrative being like something that you can experiment with, like leave the viewer with something larger than just like the impact of spectacle. So in fact, like Contempt has contempt for spectacle also, where it doesn't want to just like want the film to just be something that you watch and enjoy and eat popcorn with. It wants you to sit with it and like evaluate every moment that comes on screen. And I think like it also kind of like beautifully introduces Brigitte Bardot as a kind of stand-in for Frenchness itself in an interesting way. And the director, of course, like or the writer that she's with, her partner Paul is a kind of like the Frenchman who's letting Frenchness slip into the hands of like an American form of corruption, and like he's kind of supposed to pull it back, and that's why like he's taking it on this existential course. That's what I
she's French cinema and French culture as Godard would want it, and he's French culture as he sees it influenced by American culture in the sense of through Hollywood, like writing about that extensively as he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think like basically it's just like it's been as I pointed out, like the Dreamers also kind of like touches on this a little bit. It's constantly like this friction between America being like also a place that like supposedly values life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and free speech and all of that, and France is supposed to have lent the Bill of Rights to the United States and everything, and like Jefferson is supposed to have been inspired by the French Revolution and like having even come up with the First Amendment and all of that. So there's always like this tension between who's doing it better. And I feel like going on this existentialist track seems to be what the French advocate, whereas like the American kind of brings into a more like hedonistic, passionate kind of viewpoint, which the Frenchman is like kind of.
The French Revolution happened after the American Revolution, but the thing is that people
the Bill of Rights,
people that would later go and like lead the first phase of the French Revolution, like Lafayette and stuff, learned about revolution as a concept by joining the American Revolution. Like Lafayette was Washington's adopted son throughout the American Revolution, and a lot of the nobility and military officers that would later go on to lead the French Revolution were originally American revolutionaries. But yeah, I mean, they lent.
Isn't the Bill of Rights supposedly inspired by the rights of man? Like, because I think like Jeffersonian, especially like the Bill of Rights, is supposed to have. Maybe it's not directly from the French Revolution. Maybe it's from like Rousseau or something like that. But there's definitely an origin story of the Bill of Rights as connected to the rights of man, which
I think it goes kind of the other way, because it's 1789 when Declaration of the Rights of Man came out, and a big part of that is also that the like just a lot of the same figures, I guess, in both cases were shared. Which there's like a story where what the fuck is wait hold on there's a story where Thomas Paine. I don't know why I couldn't think of the name Thomas Paine. I literally have Harvey K's book about it. But Thomas Paine goes and actually moved after the American Revolution, moved to France, and actually during the terror got imprisoned in a French prison. Like they allowed him to be one of the delegates that actually were like was serving during the he joined the Jacobin Club and everything, and they allowed him to. But like he was a Girondin, like he was on that side of the Jacobin Club, so they actually purged him during the terror, but they didn't kill him because he's obviously was like an internationally renowned figure, but he was slated for fucking getting guillotined, and they ended up at the last minute. Robespierre got guillotined before he could give the order to guillotine Thomas Paine, and Thomas Paine was let out of prison right at like a year after the Thermidorian reaction. But like it's a lot of the same thinkers and like figures are shared by both. The French were inspired by the American Revolution to the point where, I mean, later on in his life, because the second French Revolution kind of right before Louis Napoleon took over, like that whole period, they had just let Lafayette out, and he goes around in America on like a goodwill tour or whatever, as he's trying to, keep the revolution of 1830 or whatever going, just a few decades later. And so there's a lot of turnaround between the two. and the American Revolution was essentially the revolution that the nobles, like the nobility who actually led the first part, like the tennis coat oath and everything, wanted to wage that kind of revolution. And then the fact that the Jacobins ended up taking over was that they weren't the ones that were actually in control of everything, because they're not the biggest numbers, I guess, right? Like they're not the ones that are actually like, hey, we're actually the ones in the streets. Maybe we don't have to let nobles just kind of chill.
Right. Yeah, but just to point out the tension between the two, because that's clarifying. I did of course the French Revolution postdates the American Revolution, but I also thought that the rights of man was from before. But I think definitely there is a tension in terms of which direction you take the concept of liberty. And the French insinuation is that America tends to take the concept of liberty into a pursuit of pleasure, and or accumulation of wealth, or acquisition of property and stuff like that. But French idea of liberty is supposed to be about a more transcendental view and whatnot, and also has more of a place for class solidarity, because it's rooted in the guillotining and everything. As you pointed out, the American Revolution has more of an upper bourgeoisie kind of led revolution, which you could argue the French Revolution also has shades of it, but I think the French probably think that they are more figures of solidarity than maybe even the American founding fathers or whatever.
The criticism I think that Marx had of a figure like Robespierre, right, is that he was a bourgeois, he's still kind of a bourgeois lawyer, and the factional fights that occurred between the Jacobin Club, between the Mountain and the Girondin, the two big factional parties that ended up massacring each other during the terror, is that that it wasn't based in class solidarity exactly. Of course, then Marx ended up moving to Paris during the revolution of 1848, that whole time period. He ended up going when they put up the barricades and everything, and was cheering that part on. And actually in 1832 he was there trying to be like, hey, maybe we should do more revolution, guys. And then kind of things fell apart both times.
Right.
Are we an after party?
Yeah, we should. This it feels like, but so what I wanted to say
became a conversation.
I think we need to have other people's final thoughts first.
Well, so what I wanted to say about this point is that in a similar way, Hollywood comes first, then Parisian cinema. But JG, I want to hear your final thoughts.
Yeah, I guess my final thoughts. I want to talk more about or just final thoughts on Godard, because I do think there's a lot of debate about Godard. One of I think they're a mutual friend of yours, Forrest, but the resident film critic at Jacobin, Eileen Jones, was talking about how she didn't really like Godard. And there's always been this criticism of Godard as being, either pretentious or pseudo-intellectual. But I always like to reference Pierre Bourdieu, the great French sociologist who was really close to Godard. And Godard sent him a bunch of written materials that show up in the Bourdieu documentary, Sociology as a Mixed Martial Art. And what Bourdieu says is he's looking over this written material and he's like, I don't understand all of this, but the man's a genius. And I do think that Godard, whether you always get him, and there's been films of his I've seen where I don't understand what he's getting at, I think he is a filmmaker that is very important and worthwhile. I don't think the people who say, oh, he's pretentious and just kind of useless, I disagree with that view. I especially like the fact that Godard was someone that really wanted to experiment with the medium itself, so much so that he begins to just not even want to do narrative film. He almost feels stifled by that. He wants to get out of that narrative, beginning, middle, end structure. And I think he's a very interesting filmmaker just philosophically, because I think he really wants to be liberated from different forms. He doesn't want to be stifled, and he sort of wants to push the boundaries and often work outside of them. And that's the thing I appreciate most about Godard, and that'll be what I miss most about him.
And I have two clips to talk about with this during the after party, so we'll definitely get into those thoughts about it more. I have one I want to talk about his break with Truffaut, and the other one I want to it's him talking about film critics and how that informed his at his time as a film critic. But rushing through these, the final thoughts, Kristina, let's hear some final thoughts.
10 out of 10 croissants.
Oui.
All right, Andy.
One of the things I love is Jack Palance always seemed like a sculpture to me. Like there's just something uncanny about his face. And to see him in this juxtaposed with the Roman sculptures, which great to see the actual paint on them. I know, like, we as art connoisseurs in America tend to think of it just like the white statues, but they weren't just white statues, because we're seeing a reconstructed image of those, like an actual like mold of them out of plaster, which is why they're white. But the original marble was painted on. So nice to actually see that in film. Because you certainly don't see that in art history class a lot of times, because they don't have the rights to take those pictures. But so it is kind of interesting to kind of see this man whose face I always there is something very stony about Jack Palance's face juxtaposed with these beautiful sculptures, and to see the actual the remains of the paint on it. We're not getting the full effect, because they were painted from head to toe, these garish colors. But again, we don't necessarily get to appreciate that. And so if you're ever watching this and you're wondering like why these are painted on, that actually is what the Romans did.
All right. Well, we're going to go to the after party in about 15, 20 minutes. Probably I got to do a couple things first, but I just want to say, as my final thoughts, remember, gods have not created man. Man has created gods.